Hello, everyone, and welcome to this morning's edition of the Daily Stand-Up. Without any further ado, let's get started. One of the things that I recently heard when I was coaching, I walked into an organization and we were talking about the different roles and alignment of the roles and responsibilities. And one of the things that caught me off guard was when the leader of the organization, one of the executives, asked me, now tell me, I've got the whole Scrum Master thing down, I've got the product owner thing down, but where does the project manager fit in the mix? So, my question, of course, my quick reply was, why do you feel you need a project manager? And he explained to me that what he found when he implemented Agile from the beginning, now this company's been doing Agile for probably close to a year. Now, I'm not saying they're doing great Agile, but they've been doing it for about a year. And he said, what I found is that without a project manager, those roles get, fleshed out amongst all the other people in the Agile framework or in a Scrum process or a Scrum framework. I said, yeah. He says, but I'm finding that there's no one person to follow up with for all things. So I'm missing the traditional project manager, the person who I could go to and say, what do we need to do to whip the team back into shape? What do we need to do to get back on time, on schedule, on budget? Whose head's going to roll if we're not on track, and what are we going to do to make it right? And what we found is that the old school way of thinking has crept its way back in because the traditional Scrum roles or Agile roles have not set correct expectations and have not been implemented in such a way that transparency, inspect and adapt is there. The empirical process is lost, and organizations are starting to lean back on traditional project management values. Now, in all transparency, I am a PMP, and I do still believe that the PMP is a gold standard for project management. It teaches you things about project management that you probably never even wanted to know. And it does help you in very complex situations try to figure out what people are trying to do. With that being said, it doesn't necessarily mean that every Agile product or project that you're working on needs a PMP certified project manager in addition to a Scrum Master and a product owner. In fact, I'll go on record and say I think that causes confusion. There's recently a podcast, or not a podcast, but a webinar that was being hosted. I believe it's in Silicon Slopes with Utah, and it talks about the hybrid model, or I'm trying to remember the exact wording. It said, get all the benefits of Agile and traditional project management, all in one setting. And what we find is, while that sounds great on the surface to leadership because they feel like they can, have both, what ends up happening is at the ground level it causes much confusion. So I wanted to share my thoughts about what happens to traditional project managers who are engaged in Agile work. And I thought I'd want to, express my opinion about where I think this needs stem from and how we're going to solve the problem, most importantly. So one of the things that I quickly discovered is that leadership wants predictability. That's what it boils down to, period, right? If we get down to a root cause analysis, leadership is seeking predictability. Organizations want to be able to know, when is my product or service going to be delivered? How much is it going to cost? How many teams are going to be involved? The traditional, what am I going to get? When am I going to get it? How much is it going to cost? And then along the way, they don't want to be concerned with, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? I think that with Agile and Scrum, people have almost gone too far in a pendulum in the opposite direction, where they've said, there's a no estimates movement, man, and let's just forget about all that, man, and we can just, what we build is what we build, and we'll build the best of what we build, and we'll do it, and we'll make you happy. And, it gets to the point where, leadership doesn't want to be happy anymore. They want to know what they're getting. And it sounds so silly, but it's so true if you think about it. It would be the same as walking into a Great Clips or a Supercuts for a guy and saying, just make me happy. Well, it's not that big of a deal. You'd still want some predictability because you won't want to walk out with something crazy or, not exactly what you like or something that's just not comfortable for you. So it begs the question, how do we get to a level of comfort within the organization where the leadership feels comfortable with what's being delivered? They feel like it's predictable enough for them to be able to, have a level of comfort and not interrupt or interfere, but also in a way that it doesn't require the heavy hand of a project manager integrated in with a product owner, and a scrum master. That's the thing we're trying to avoid. So in traditional project management, the project manager's role is to make sure we're on time, on budget, that everybody's doing their thing, that we get a high quality product or service, that we release on time, and that everything's good. While I appreciate this role, it is probably the most villainized and hated role in the entire organization, because that's the person who does everything in their willpower to make sure that we deliver, but at the same time, they are often, how shall I put it, not gracious, because they're not exactly a people person. They're not a third-party advocate. They're not looking out for any one person's best interest. They're rewarding people for, working extra hours and for putting in extra time and for, working nights and weekends and just getting it done. They have a get-it-done attitude. And while I think that, having a get-it-done attitude is, a good trait, applying it for every single project and every single thing that you're working on can cause teams to fall into a state of lowliness, if you will. Their morale goes down. They don't want to work. So it begs the question, if that's true, then what happens when an Agile Dad coach comes in and says, hey, you don't need project managers anymore. We're going to realign and redelegate some of those responsibilities to other roles. What happens to the project manager? So after doing some thorough research of lots of different companies, we discovered, and I got these statistics written down, 10% of the project managers, traditional project managers, transition over and become Scrum Masters. So it's not one and the same, and it's not a one-to-one transition. The number's so low because it's two different roles. The Scrum Master is someone who is a people person, who has good bedside manner, who cares and takes care and nurtures teams, where a project manager is one who drives and has a heavy fist and a whip, cracks the whip to get things done. So those two are different roles, but every now and then you get a project manager who's empathetic and sympathetic and does fantastic as a Scrum Master, but it's only about 10%. Another 5% get a promotion. I know that sounds crazy because I said, where does the project manager go? But 5% of them get promoted to portfolio or release managers or program managers, and basically their responsibility becomes to work on the bookend pieces that the actual Scrum or Agile team doesn't necessarily tackle. That could be things like finance, legal, regulatory, marketing, budgeting, training, just making sure, are we training ready? Are we marketing ready? Do we have everything ready to go before it launches? Also in the pre-stages, they can say, do we have budget allocated? Do we take into consideration training for this? So they'll take care of all the pieces that the Scrum or Agile organization tends to forget about. So they'll make sure that we tie everything up with a nice clean bow and get that delivery that's sharp and pristine that we're looking for. So that accounts for 15% now, 10 and 5. Here comes the big one. 70%, 7-0, become part of the rivaled Po Bafata that I talk about often. So you have the product owner, business analyst, functional analyst, and technical analyst. And this is a collection of people because we say that no product owner should ever sit on the cloud, that they should have input from these various analysts. We'll do a separate podcast describing those analysts and talking more about them at another time. But a lot of these project managers become product owners or functional analysts because their goal is pretty much in line with a project manager to get a high quality product or service to market. So a lot of times they become the resident product owner, where they're focused on the longevity of the product, where we're going with it long term, whether we're going to deliver it on time, what features it's going to have. They tend to fit real well there. The other role that I pointed out was functional analyst. Now, functional analyst is more strategic. This is someone who typically works on the business side of the house, and their biggest concern is making sure that we beat the competitor market, that we have a better product or service, something that flows better and works better, something that separates us from everybody else. And they're very in line strategically with what the organization does. A good example of this would be when many people said, we need a faster horse, we need a faster horse, we need a faster horse. It was Ford who said, no, you need a car. So it's the person who thinks outside of the box and comes up with the right solution strategically that helps the organization be successful. So now that accounts for 70%. So we're up to 85%. That only leaves 15% remaining. 10% get what I call the free pass, or the GYF card. GYF stands for Genie, You're Free. If you've ever watched the movie Aladdin, the third wish was spent by Aladdin to set the genie free. And I think that this is an important similitude. I think that people who have become traditional project managers oftentimes want nothing more than to just go back and write code or go back and do what they were doing before. So this is their pass when it's time to separate, to say, you know what, Jeannie, you're free. You no longer have to do this. Even though you're good at it, if it's not something you love to do, let's get you back into doing something that you love to do. Let's increase your morale and get you back to doing what you love. And I think that's so critical. So we want to set those people free and get them back to doing what they love. And then finally, the last 5%, well, those are the ones who you find in the restroom in the morning, holding the ivory-colored paper in their hand, polishing the PMP lapel pin on their jacket. You know, it's no offense because they're great at what they do, but they just need to seek that opportunity elsewhere on a project where they can practice those traditional things that they learned and strive so hard to get. In no way am I trying to say that the PMP certification or the PMI organization is bad in any way. What I'm trying to say is that a lot of the teachings that come along with it are a little bit heavyweight for the Agile framework. So it's a matter of finding that balance. And it's a matter of, pulling out your copy of the 12-step program that we produced at Agile Dad and going through and looking specifically and paying attention to step 3, where we talk about a clear delineation of roles and responsibilities, and making sure that the Scrum Master and the product owner and the team have all the responsibilities of a traditional project manager covered, and that they understand which of those they are responsible for so that they can continue to press forward and build high-quality products and services without having an additional person taking on the responsibilities of a project manager. Well, I know that was a mouthful today, and I hope it helps. Tune in for additional topics and themes and thoughts. We appreciate all the emails we've received so far, and we encourage you to continue sending us topic requests, things that you want to talk about, things that are important to you, so that we can make sure we're touching on those. We invite you to visit agiledad.com, where you can download several documents, videos, and see all kinds of good, helpful, free resources to help you improve your Agile implementation. And as always, we ask you to stay well, stay healthy, and stay Agile. Until next time, take care.